When it comes to a do-it-yourself epoxy flooring system, you have a lot of choices. And there are a lot of different types of do-it-yourself epoxy systems on the market. There are some that can be purchased at a big box store that on the surface seem relatively inexpensive, whereas then there are those, such as the ones from Epoxy Plus, that have a higher price tag, but it is really a case of you're going to get what you pay for. This floor here is an example of what you get when you purchase one of those do-it-yourself epoxy systems at a big box store. So here's a floor that was installed using one of those big box store epoxy systems, and you can see that it barely even covered the surface of the floor. There's so much of the concrete actually ghosting through. It did not cover up very many of the imperfections in the floor, and long term this system is just not going to hold up. So it's one of those cases where the customer tried to save a little bit of money on the front end, but now they're having to pay a contractor to come in and redo it, this time using our full broadcast flake system, and they're going to get the floor that they really wanted. So we actually see this a lot at Epoxy Plus. We get a lot of calls asking us, hey, I just installed one of those floors from the big box store. I'm really not happy with the results. Or they say, we installed this floor about a month ago and it's already peeling up. Is there anything that we can do to fix it? Can we install one of your flake broadcast systems on top of this? Well, the answer is yes or no. It just all depends. So what we want to look for is we want to make sure that we do have good adhesion first of all. If we have good adhesion with the product, but we're just not satisfied with the aesthetics or the overall appearance of the floor, then we can actually sand the surface and go right over top of it. If we find that it's delaminating on us, well, that was probably due to improper surface prep to begin with. So we almost want to start from scratch by removing the coating that's on there and then rebuilding the floor using our epoxy system. In this case, we got really good adhesion. We've done some tests. We know that this epoxy is actually stuck down, but the customer is just not happy with the look of the floor. So we're going to take our grinding machine or our sanding machine. We're going to sand over the top of the surface. We're going to get it all nice and prepped, and then we're going to come back and we're going to put our full broadcast flake system on top of this. And you're going to see what an amazing transformation this is going to be. All right, so in order for us to prep the surface for the new epoxy coating, we need to make sure that this surface that's down now is all scuffed up and scratched up so that it will get us a mechanical bond of the new flake system that we're going to install. So we're using one of these types of machines here. We have it hooked up to a shop vac, even though really this type of preparation doesn't really create much dust, but we had the vacuum here, so we've hooked it up just to make sure there isn't any airborne dust at all. So we're going to continue on sanding out this entire floor. We'll vacuum it all up, and then we'll be ready to install the flake system. So we finished all of the sanding on the existing coating that's on the floor to get it ready for the installation of the new coating that we're going to put on. Now, as you can see, we've pretty much deglossed the surface. We've got a lot of fine scratches that are all in the surface, and that's exactly what we're looking for in order to give us that mechanical bond that we're trying to achieve when we put the new coating on top of the existing coating. There's a little bit of dust that was created. We did have our machine hooked up to a shop vac, but there's still a little bit of dust on the floor. So we're going to go ahead and vacuum it in preparation for the installation of the epoxy. All right, so all of these same regular principles of applying epoxy go for this procedure as well. So we're going to go ahead and get some ribbons rolled out. You can spread this really whichever way you're most comfortable spreading it, whether it be with just strictly just a roller, squeegee, back roll, flat blade squeegee, not squeegee, really doesn't matter. We're just going to try to get this down for this project at a rate of about 120 square feet per gallon. All right, so I'll just get my shoes on here, and I'm going to go ahead and use the squeegee and back roll method. So we're just going to kind of, at this point, just kind of move the epoxy along, and then we'll come in and we'll fill everything in with our roller. So this is different than putting down, say, a designer metallic coating. We don't need as much volume out on the floor, because we're not trying to make pigments move around and do all kinds of fancy things. This is simply just a base for us to be able to broadcast our chips into. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do here is run my edges. So we'll just roll some material to our edge. And what I did as I was squeegeeing, I left these, the ends here, I left them a little bit thick of material, and that way I would have some to be able to use when I came to roll the edges. Now you'll also notice here we did not put any tape up on the bottoms of the walls, simply because of the fact it wasn't necessary, because the customer here has left off the baseboards until we got done with the floors. So it's actually one less thing for us to have to do. All right, so there's our edges. Now I'm going to go ahead and just roll out the field here just to even everything out. All right, you can see really just how fast it is to roll out an entire floor when you use an 18-inch roller. And that's why we really stress, no matter the coating, always use an 18-inch roller. It just makes the job so much easier. It goes so much faster. And it actually puts the coatings on much more even. All right, so now we got our flakes all ready to go. I've got 1/4 inch flakes in here. I've got maybe about half a bucket full, so it's not so heavy that I can get out here and broadcast. And what we're trying to do is we're not trying to throw down into the epoxy. We're trying to throw up and let it naturally fall down into the wet epoxy. So we're just grabbing small handfuls and we're working a section. So I like to do a little bit of a lighter broadcast to get me going. I give these chips just a few minutes to settle, and then when I come back I can see better areas that need more. All right, so let's get another bucket. So here's what we look like after that first, what I consider kind of a lighter broadcast. You can still see there's a lot of darker spots with the epoxy coming through. We're trying to get rid of all of those wet spots. So we really need to add more flakes to this. But that gives us a nice start on this project. So we'll broadcast again about the same amount that we just did, using another half full bucket, and that should give us pretty much full broadcast. All right, so we'll continue with our broadcast. Same thing. Now you notice I'm leaving probably about maybe 12 inches or so right along this edge. I don't want to get too many flakes over there because then I'm just going to start rolling them into epoxy. So I'd rather have just clean epoxy right there. So I'll just get close, and then on the next section we'll fill in that gap. Now as I'm doing this, I'm looking kind of back over into this section over here, and I'm looking to see if I see any wet spots. It's looking pretty good. Just maybe a couple here or there. So it's very, very easy to come back in, and we just broadcast some more, and then that epoxy will eventually absorb all the flakes. All right, so you can see right here is an area where we're real light on flake. You can see so much of the gray epoxy coming through. So that's why I like to allow the first light coat to kind of settle, and then I can start seeing all of the wet spots that are coming up, and it's very easy for me to go back in and broadcast another light coat and make sure we have 100% coverage. All right, so this is what your broadcast floor should look like when you're complete. There should be no wet spots anywhere, no signs of any of the moist epoxy coming through. That's why it's called 100% broadcast, because we are covering 100% of the epoxy underneath. So we'll go ahead and let everything dry tonight. We'll come back in the morning. We have a couple of steps left before the floor is complete, and we'll show you how it's done. All right, so here we are the next morning at our full broadcast flake floor. The floor is totally dry, and we're ready to move on to the next step. Now you remember that we did a full broadcast. We oversaturated the floor with flakes to make sure that we had no bare spots anywhere. And because of that, we have a lot of loose flake that's sitting on the surface. So what we need to do now is remove all of those loose flakes, and then we'll do a scraping. Okay, so there's no real right or wrong way to do this next couple of steps. I prefer to blow off all of the loose flake into one end of the room using some type of a blower. Now, you can use a shop vac like this if you put the hose in the opposite port, it will actually turn into a blower, but you can use any type of leaf blower that you have at your disposal. Some people choose to scrape the floor at this stage and then blow it all off. I like to blow all the loose flake off first and see what I have underneath, and then I can really gauge the amount of scraping that I need to do. So that's what I'm going to do now, is I'm going to blow it all back into one pile. I'll pick up the loose flakes, and then we'll move into the scraping. Jeez. It's too early. I need a little more coffee. All right, let's try this again. Okay, so we got all of our loose flake blown over to this side of the room. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this bag here, and I'm going to fill it up with this flake. The reason that I'm doing that is because I'm going to want to save some of this. Because if something were ever to happen to this floor, maybe a little damage to a spot because of something heavy dropping on it or whatever it might be, and we ever had to come in here and redo a little tiny section, do a tiny little bit of a patch, then I have all the flake that's going to match the floor. I don't have to go and buy any new stuff. So I'll fill this up. That's plenty right there. And we'll just save this in the garage, and we'll always have it in case we ever had to do any type of repair on the floor. All right, so now as for the rest of the flake, I'm going to just pick it up, and I mean, we could just vacuum this up or what have you, but I have this tool right here. So as you can see, a lot of flake remains on the surface of these floors, which is exactly what we want to see the next day when we come in to do this. That way we know we got really, really nice coverage. All right, so now the next step is to scrape the floor. And the reason why we're going to scrape the floor is because as the flakes fall into the wet epoxy, some of them end up on edge as far as instead of being flat. We want to make sure that we knock off all of those edges or the tips of the flakes that are standing up. We want this nice and smooth, so that way when we put on our top coat, we end up with a really nice smooth floor with no little bits of flake sticking up. So we use a tool like this. Now this is, I would say, more of a professional one. If you were a contractor doing this every day, you might consider investing in one of these. But you can use any type of floor scraper, not a razor blade scraper, but a floor scraper, even like a paint scraper. You could actually do this process by hand if you wanted to on a two-car garage. But they sell all kinds of different floor type scrapers at Home Depot and Lowe's, these big box stores. But nothing fancy. And what we're going to do is we're basically going to take this, and without using any pressure, we're just going to slide this along the floor. Just like that. And you'll see as we do that, little bits of the flake will pop up because that's the ones that are sticking up on edge, and we're knocking those off flat. So we're not applying pressure. If you apply a lot of pressure, you'll find that you'll actually start shaving down the flakes, and you'll change the size of them. So we want to keep these nice 1/4 inch size flakes, but we just want to knock off the top. So we'll do that on the whole floor, and then we'll give it a nice vacuum in preparation for our top coat. All right, So as we're going, we're not putting any pressure on the scraper. We're just allowing it to glide on the surface here, and you can see it's just knocking off all of the high spots of these flakes that didn't really get stuck down to the epoxy. All right, so now it's time to gather up all of the loose flake that we just scraped. We'll do that to the whole floor, and then we'll be ready for our coating. Okay, so we got all of our scraping done. We vacuumed up thoroughly. There's really no remnants of any loose flake left on the floor. We vacuumed it 3 times to make sure that we got everything up. Now, as we apply our top coat, you are going to still have a few loose flakes here or there because it's almost impossible to get every single piece of flake cleaned up. And that's okay, it'll just get locked into the top coat. But the object here is to get up 99.9% of everything that we've scraped and that is loose on the floor. And we're ready to head to the top coat now. But I noticed something on the floor here that we have an opportunity to correct. If you come over here, I'm going to show you. What we have here is a spot over on the floor. Now, it might be a little bit hard to see in the camera, but right here, in this area right here, it is just a little bit bare. I'm seeing just a little bit too much of the epoxy showing through. That might be a little bit better there. And so what I want to do is I'm going to add just a few more flakes to this area into the top coat. And the top coat will then lock them in place. And that will just make sure that that spot doesn't stand out. Chances are nobody else would notice it in the whole scheme of things, but I notice it, and so I have a chance to correct it now. We have a lot of flake left over that we scraped up, so we'll just sprinkle some in there when we get to it. But for now, let's go mix up the top coat and apply it. All right, so there are a couple choices for our top coat. We could go with a clear 100% solids epoxy, or depending on your application and different variables, you might want to go with our polyaspartic as the top coat. For this particular project, we're going to go with our EPE 100 clear epoxy. Now, for this to dry and cure clear, we're going to put it down thin, which is what we want to do anyway. So we're going to go at about 120 to 150 square feet per gallon. And what we're going to do is we're going to simply pour a bead of it here, just like that. I'm going to get my spiked shoes on. All right, and then with a window squeegee, the difference between a window squeegee and the normal squeegees that we use for applying epoxy is that this will put it down ultra thin. It's a window squeegee. You can get this at any of the big box stores or anywhere, very inexpensive. It's got a much thinner blade, it's very light, and this will allow us to put it down very thin because we're not trying to encapsulate all of the flake, we're just trying to coat them, cover them. So there will still be that little bit of texture from the flake, and these window squeegees do a really nice job of that, whether it be putting down a polyaspartic or the epoxy that we're using. So very simply, just get it started here. Pulling some right along our wall, making sure we got everything covered. All right, and then we can simply just pull it back like this. So what we're doing is we're coating everything, we're locking everything in place. but this is allowing us to put it down very thin. So we'll get some down this wall here, just like that, and then we'll just keep pulling it. Now you notice that we're letting it sit in the bucket while we do this, and that's okay for a short period of time. So we do need to work fairly quickly. It's best to mix up small batches of your top coat and put them down. I'll add a little more here. All right, and now I'm going to start moving a little bit quicker because we know that the clock is ticking on our material here. Okay, now, if you're really, really, really good with the squeegee, you don't even need to back roll the floor. I always like to do it anyway because it just, if there's a little puddle or anywhere that I missed, we're going to back roll this, we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to give us a nice even floor. So just like we would any epoxy coating, we're going to start with our edge. Super quick. Just run this thing right down the edge. Make sure we have full coverage. No puddles. Everything gets locked into place. Now we come back with our 18-inch roller. And again, this is going to be real quick. Because again, it's just to see if we've missed any little puddles or anything. So I'm actually just going side to side all the way across the room here. So you see how fast this goes when you use the 18-inch rollers. So again, always use 18-inch rollers when you're doing any coatings project. You'll find them under the tools category of the website, and we can ship them to you right along with the rest of your product, and you'll have everything you need to do a professional installation on your project. So again, depending on the top coat that you're using, just follow the recommended installation instructions for that particular product. Let's see, this is looking pretty good, but I think I have the time, so I'm going to hit it one more time going this way. Okay, real quick, you remember I said that there was a little spot that I wasn't happy with. It was just a little bit light on flake and a little bit too much of the gray base coat was showing through. You might even be able to see it, the camera picking it up. It looks just a little bit different there, almost like a little bit of a shadow mark. That's actually because of that gray epoxy. So I'm going to show you how to fix that real quick and easy. All right, so I have some of the flake in my hand, okay? And we're going to sprinkle just a little tiny bit, not a lot, just a little tiny bit. So literally just a few, and you can see we're adding just a little bit more color to this area. Just a little bit's all that's needed. Okay, so that looks much better. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come with our little roller and just lightly roll over top of it to put epoxy on top of those flakes, and then as they dry, they'll kind of just all fuse together. Now we know that our roller here has epoxy on it already, so we're just kind of very lightly, I'm not putting any pressure, it's just the weight of the roller going on top. It's wetting the flake, and then that'll stay right in place. Problem solved. All right, so we poured out our product. We're running at about 150 square feet a gallon or so. We squeegeed it, we've back rolled it. We fixed our little spot over here, and now we're ready to carry on and get the second half done. So I'm going to go mix up the next batch of epoxy, and then we're just going to repeat the whole process. All right, so here we are. Our project is completed. We started yesterday. We did all of our prep. We fixed some cracks that we had in the surface. We put down our body coat of epoxy, the EPE 200 in a gray. We broadcast our flakes. We came back today. We scraped, we vacuumed, and then we put on our EPE 100 top coat. And you can see what an amazing transformation this was to this garage floor. This is going to give the owner a long life floor here that they can use for whatever they choose to use it for. If you have any other questions about our products or about this system in particular, you can contact us through our website at www.epoxyplus.com. But I hope that this video gives you some confidence that you too can install one of these full broadcast flake floors yourself.